The Philadelphia Eagles just destroyed the Washington Commanders in the NFC Championship, and it really wasn't that close of a game either. What this game ultimately came down to was one thing: talent. Yup, something that the Commanders didn't really have a ton of this year. Meanwhile, the Eagles are a bona fide super team, and it's all thanks to this man right here, Howie Roseman, the executive VP of the team. And so today, in this video, I'm going to be doing a deep dive into how this super team came to be. From the draft selections to the genius trades and free agency signings, we'll be looking through recent Eagles history to find out just how this team was constructed. To begin, let's flash back to the year 2020. The Eagles were coming off an NFC East championship, but a disappointing first-round loss to the Seattle Seahawks in a home wildcard game. Now, these Eagles were 2 years removed from their Philly special Super Bowl, and at the time, the team was pretty unsure of what to do at quarterback. The Philly legend Nick Foles had been moved in the previous offseason to the Jaguars. Meanwhile, the Carson Wentz experiment had run its course in Philly, and fans were ready for something new. Enter the 2020 COVID draft. In the first round of this draft, the Eagles selected Jalen Reagor, 21st overall. And well, this was actually one of the few recent miscues from the Philly front office, as Reagor would go on to finish his stint in Philly with just under 700 yards and 3 touchdowns in 2 seasons. And it turns out the very next pick after Reagor turned out to be Justin Jefferson. But what happened in the second round of the 2020 draft would change the trajectory of the Eagles franchise forever.
Philadelphia Eagles select Jalen Hurts, quarterback, Oklahoma.
The Eagles took a chance on Jalen Hurts, who was coming off a Heisman finalist season while at Oklahoma. Then for the rest of that draft, the Eagles swapped a 3rd and a 5th round pick to the Lions in exchange for Darius Slay. Another move that would end up paying dividends for the franchise in the near future. So now Hurts and Slay joined a pretty loaded Eagles team with the likes of Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson, and Dallas Goedert already there. Now when we fast forward to the 2020 season, Hurts didn't see a ton of time to begin his rookie year. Initially, the number 2 wearing QB only really saw action on QB designed runs. But after some ineffective play from Carson Wentz in a Week 13 matchup against the Packers, Wentz was ultimately benched for Hurts. And Hurts would go on to keep this starting spot for the rest of the season, where he would finish with a little over 1,300 total yards from scrimmage, as well as 9 total touchdowns. However, the Eagles would ultimately finish 4-11. The 2021 offseason became crucial for the construction of this Philly super team. It all began in January, when the Eagles decided to hire Nick Sirianni to take over as their head coach after the firing of Doug Peterson. Sirianni would of course go on to become one of the winningest, but also one of the most controversial head coaches in NFL history. Then a few months later in March, the Eagles traded Carson Wentz to the Indianapolis Colts for a 2021 3rd round pick, as well as a conditional 2022 1st round pick. Then as for the 2021 draft, the Eagles were positioned at 6th overall. However, they decided to trade that and their 5th round pick in exchange for Miami's 12th overall pick, but also their 4th round picks in that year, as well as the Dolphins' 1st round pick in the 2022 draft. But then, the Eagles would swap that 12th overall pick and a 3rd round pick to the Cowboys for their 10th overall pick. So after all of that pre-draft movement, the Eagles ended up doing this. In the 1st round, they decided on the Heisman-winning, national champion receiver DeVonta Smith out of Alabama. In the 2nd round, the Eagles would select Landon Dickerson. And the last noteworthy pick out of that draft was Kenneth Gainwell, who Philly selected in the 5th round. Okay, so then fast forward to the 2021 season, where the Eagles took some major steps forward as a team. That year, they finished 2nd in the NFC East with a 9-8 record, which was enough to earn them a wild-card playoff berth. Throughout this season, Hurts showed tremendous growth as he accounted for over 3,800 yards from scrimmage, as well as 26 total touchdowns. Now this growth was thanks in large part to the Eagles' new offensive coordinator, Shane Steichen, who prioritized a run-first offense. DeVonta Smith also had a solid rookie campaign, as he finished with 916 yards, as well as 5 touchdowns. The Eagles would ultimately end their season with a loss to the defending Super Bowl champions, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, falling 31-15 in the wild card round. However, things were about to reach new heights in Philly during the 2022 offseason. So, remember earlier in this video when I said the Eagles traded Carson Wentz to the Colts for a 3rd round pick? Well, don't forget, they also received a conditional first-round pick as well. And since Wentz did play over 75% of the snaps for the Colts, the Eagles were in fact compensated with a first-round pick from Indy. So with this pick, Philly would go on to draft Jordan Davis 13th overall. However, this pick wasn't even the biggest news of the night for Philly, because don't forget, they still had a first-round draft pick, but then this happened.
How about this trade that just went down?
Wow, we thought it was going to be Deebo Samuel. Turns out A.J. Brown stole the show here.
Yeah.
So Philly got the absolute steal of the draft by getting a bona fide and proven superstar in the league with A.J. Brown from the Titans. However, the Eagles still weren't done in the 2022 draft, as they selected Cam Jurgens in the second round. So then after a very successful draft, the Eagles made another huge offseason move as they traded a 2023 5th round pick and two 2024 6th round picks to the New Orleans Saints in exchange for C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Finally, everything began to come together for the Eagles during the 2022 season. They started the season with a red-hot 8-game winning streak, with many of those games being multi-possession wins. The Eagles would close out the regular season going 14-3 and earning the 1 seed for the NFC. During this time, the Eagles' pass game took a huge step forward. The combination of Hurts' continued growth while under Shane Steichen's system, along with the addition of A.J. Brown, took the Eagles' air raids to brand new heights. Hurts finished his third regular season with an incredible 3,701 passing yards and 22 passing touchdowns to go along with 760 rush yards and 13 rushing touchdowns. Hurts also finished the season second in MVP voting, falling just behind Patrick Mahomes. And their offseason acquisition, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, paid immediate dividends during his first stint here in Philly, as he led the league in interceptions with 6 while only playing in 11 regular season games. During the playoffs, the Eagles dismantled both the New York Giants and then the San Francisco 49ers en route to their second Super Bowl appearance in just 5 years. During the big game, Jalen Hurts had the game of his life as he finished with 304 passing yards and a passing touchdown, as well as 70 rush yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. Unfortunately, Hurts did have a costly fumble in the second quarter that gave Kansas City life and some momentum heading into halftime. Then unfortunately, the game came down to a pretty controversial holding call that most fans disagreed with, and the Chiefs ended up victorious. However, this Eagles team wasn't going anywhere and were poised for another great season in 2023. During the 2023 offseason, the Eagles decided that Hurts would be their guy and agreed to a 5-year, $255 million deal. Then during the 2023 draft, the Eagles selected Jalen Carter in the first round and 9th overall. Now at one point, Carter was looking like he could be the first overall pick. However, due to some off-the-field issues, he fell to the Eagles' lap at 9th. As for the rest of the 2023 draft, the Eagles didn't really do anything that worthy of note. But in that same offseason, the Eagles decided to part ways with C.J. Gardner-Johnson, a decision that the franchise would quickly come to regret. While everyone was expecting similar results to the previous season, even after a league-best 10-1 start, the 2023 season became one to forget as they then dropped 5 of their last 6 games to lose the NFC East title to Dallas. Philly then got embarrassed in front of all of America in the wild card round as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers once again ended their season, this time with a 32-9 beatdown. After the season, the entire media then turned on Philly. Sports analysts all over were calling for Sirianni's job, while also claiming that the team should move on from Hurts. This season, Hurts and the entire offense heavily regressed. Jalen threw 3 times as many interceptions this season as compared to the last. This was likely thanks in large part to Shane Steichen no longer being the offensive coordinator in Philly. Instead, during the 2023 season, head coach Sirianni was the one calling the plays. As such, the offense looked like a shell of its former self. And what might have just been worst of all for the Eagles, their all-world center, Jason Kelce, announced his retirement from the NFL. But there was a light at the end of the tunnel. March 13th, 2024 will certainly go down as one of the most important days in Philadelphia Eagles history. The Eagles got their guy to elevate this offense to its former high-flying glory. This is when Joe Schoen of the New York Giants made one of the biggest bonehead mistakes in NFL history. And actually, that exact same day, the Eagles also signed free agent Zach Bond to a 1-year contract. Then, just one day later, the Eagles decided to bring CJ Gardner-Johnson back on a 3-year deal worth $27 million, but the Eagles were still far from done. In the 2024 draft, the Eagles spent their 22nd overall pick on Toledo cornerback Quinyon Mitchell. Initially, this pick seemed like a bit of a head-scratcher, as Terrion Arnold from Alabama seemed like the consensus top pick at the cornerback position. Then in the second round, the Eagles selected the fan-favorite cornerback out of Iowa, Cooper DeJean, 40th overall. The Eagles also had a major coaching makeover this offseason. On the defensive side of the ball, Vic Fangio was hired to be the defensive coordinator, while Kellen Moore would go on to be the Eagles' new offensive coordinator. Now, when we fast forward to the 2024 season, it actually looked a lot like the 2022 season for Philly. The Eagles ended up going 14-3 overall, and in all honesty, they were really just 2 drops away from a 16-1 record. During this season, the Eagles got back to basics while offensively focusing once again on being run first. Saquon Barkley's talent and potential were finally put on full display here in Philly, and thanks to an imposing Eagles line, Barkley was able to finish the regular season with a league-best 2,005 rush yards as well as 13 rushing touchdowns. Saquon likely could have broken Eric Dickerson's single-season rushing record. However, the Eagles decided to rest him in their Week 18 matchup against the Giants, and now looking back, this was a smart decision. This new successful rushing attack wasn't only thanks to Barkley though. Hurts was able to put up 630 yards on the ground to go with an impressive 14 rushing touchdowns. But the passing game was still pretty impressive, as AJ Brown was able to have a 1,000-yard season even after missing significant time. Meanwhile, Dallas Goedert and Devontae Smith also had solid seasons receiving, and Saquon also aided in the passing game, which is where he provided us with possibly the play of the year. It's the Eagles' defense, though, that was arguably more impressive than the offense, as it did finish as the statistical best defense in the entire NFL. Nose tackle Jalen Carter had a breakout sophomore season, as he finished with 42 total tackles and 4.5 sacks in the regular season. Meanwhile, Zach Bond had a team-best 151 total tackles, as well as 3.5 sacks, 5 forced fumbles, and an interception. It ended up being quite a season for a guy who was formerly a special teams type of player. Finally, the rookie cornerback duo of DeJean and Mitchell has been absolutely shut down the entire season. So now, let's bring up 4 of the major offseason acquisitions the Eagles had: Saquon, Bond, DeJean, and Mitchell. It's insane to say this, but all 4 have been nominated for an AP Season Award. This all just goes to show that the Eagles might have had the greatest offseason of all time. Now here in the playoffs, everyone in Philly has elevated their game. The Eagles' offense has been a perfect 3 for 3 on opening postseason possessions. They also have not turned the ball over once across 3 games. Jalen Hurts has thrown for 505 total yards as well as 3 passing TDs. Meanwhile, Dallas Goedert has kind of had a breakout postseason with 188 receiving yards as well as a pretty impressive touchdown. Saquon has a whopping 442 rush yards as well as 5 TDs. The defensive stars have also been balling. Zach Bond is continuing his amazing season with 26 tackles, an interception, and a forced fumble in the playoffs. And Quinyon Mitchell has also recorded 2 dagger interceptions during his first postseason run. The Eagles are also coming off an absolute beatdown of their divisional rival Commanders, a game in which the defense forced 4 total turnovers. The talent discrepancy in that game was palpable, as Philly had Washington outclassed in just about every position. So now, here we are. The Eagles are headed to their 2nd Super Bowl in just 3 years. They will once again face off with the Chiefs, this time with the opportunity to avenge themselves from falling just short a few years back. But this time around, Philly has bolstered their personnel as well as their coaching.